Dave Jamieson, as head of the Iowa Finance Authority, committed really, truly horrific acts of sexual harassment. Not only that, but he intimidated the people who worked in that office. They would try to stop him. They'd try to correct him. He'd say, "You must be allergic to a paycheck." Can you imagine what it felt like to go to work in that office? And I wanted to know this. I'm sitting on a board being asked to write a check with your money. Taxpayer money. And I just wanted to know this before I did that. Is Dave Jamieson going to be asked to chip in? And I wasn't able to get an answer. Now, it is my hope that the Attorney General's office and the Governor's office will decide to file a restitution suit against Dave Jamieson and to go after him. Yeah, let's hope they do that. Let's hope that they do that. But for me, being asked to write a check on behalf of taxpayers, not knowing the answer to that question, I wasn't ready to do that. I wanted to know that he was going to be asked to pitch in before I was willing to agree to write a check of your money. Let me tell you why. I spent 8 years in the Attorney General's office. Most of what I did was financial crimes prosecution. It's how I got to know the State Auditor's office. But a big piece of what I did, the second biggest piece of what I did, were sex abuse cases. Sexually violent predator, civil commitment cases. The worst of the worst. Now, every time you pick a jury in a courtroom, you tell people what the case is going to be about, and you ask them if they might have some reason that they cannot be an impartial juror in that case. If it's a robbery case, someone might raise their hand and say, "I was robbed once, and I think if I'm sitting on this jury, I'm not going to be able to be impartial because I'm going to be thinking about the time that I was robbed." Right? That's a little unusual. You know what's really common? Ladies and gentlemen, every time you pick a jury in a sex abuse case in the state of Iowa, it's not two people who go back into the judge's chambers and say, "I can't sit on this case because I was sexually abused." It's not 5 people who do it. It's 8. It's 12. I have been in judges' chambers all around the state of Iowa and sat there with a judge, a defense attorney, and myself while individual jurors came back one by one and told us things that had happened to them that they had never told anyone before. People who had been married for 50 years whose spouse didn't know that they were raped, whose spouse didn't know that they were sexually assaulted. And every time for 8 years that I picked one of those juries, it struck me and it stayed with me. And I just have one question. How are we going to change anything if we don't change something? How are we going to change anything if we don't change something? Do we want to have an impact? Do we want to reduce the amount of sexual abuse, the amount of sexual harassment that happens in Iowa? Well, then maybe we need to change something. Maybe what we need to do is hold people accountable when they're the ones that have done the deed. And if we want to do that, not only are we going to deter people from committing acts of sexual harassment like Dave Jamieson, but we're going to put taxpayers in a better position, because the fewer people who are public employees who commit acts of sexual harassment, the fewer times taxpayers are going to be on the hook for it. This is not complicated. But I lost a lot of sleep over this decision because I have so much respect for Tom Miller and so much respect for his recommendation. Yet at the same time, I ended up voting against it because I simply disagreed with this individual. Right? And because every time I traveled the state for a year running for state auditor, I said, I'm going to be someone who puts the public ahead of my party. I am not going to be someone who simply does what everyone expects me to do because I'm a member of a certain party. And this is an office that's supposed to be nonpartisan. It's supposed to be a taxpayer's watchdog. And frankly, despite having lost a lot of sleep over it, I still cast that no vote. First 2-to-1 vote that anybody can remember. Because if we're going to change something, we have to change something. And so that's the start of it. We'll see what goes on from there.